For early access to new episodes and other exclusive content, go to patreon.com/MiharuTheFox. Hey guys, it's Miharu and welcome back to SpyroCast. This is episode 48, and today I have another new guest. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello folks, my name is TheKiwiDragon. I'm a sometimes YouTuber, sometimes streamer when I can remember to have some sort of consistent schedule. Bit of a Spyro fan and a bit of a Crash Bandicoot fan. That's primarily what I'm known for, but I do love me some Spyro.
Very, very nice. So what is your history with Spyro?
Oh, you're talking a long time there. Let's see if we can wind back the years. So growing up, I didn't really have many Spyro games to play as a kid. I kind of watched my cousin. He used to have basically every Spyro and Crash game under the sun. Used to go around his house. Used to watch him play all these Spyro games as a kid, and I'd just be fascinated with them. And I remember saying to my mum as a kid, "I want to have a Spyro game. I want to have a Spyro game," and she'd be like, "Yeah, okay, well, we'll get you Spyro. We'll get you Spyro." And one day she bought me a Spyro game, and of all Spyro games, this is where people get a kick out of this. I was thinking maybe I'll get Ripto's Rage or Year of the Dragon. No, I got Season of Ice.
Oh, okay. I was gonna, for a second I thought you were gonna say Enter the Dragonfly.
Oh, no. Some people would argue that Season of Ice would be worse, but yeah.
You know what? Maybe. Possibly.
But yeah, no, so I got Season of Ice, and I had it on me. It was interesting because I didn't have it as like a birthday gift or a Christmas present or anything like that. I got given it because I was about 7 years old at the time, and I was booked in for basically having my tonsils removed in hospital. So basically I had this little Spyro game as like a wee gift after the surgery. So I just remember waking up and just booting up my Game Boy Advance and just sitting there in the hospital bed. And I just vividly remember my aunt coming into the hospital ward just because she worked as a nurse in the same hospital. And my mum was like, "Oh, your aunt's going to come visit you." I'm like, "Okay, yeah." I'm just heavily engrossed in Spyro Season of Ice. My aunt comes in and be like, "Oh, how you doing? You feeling all right?" Yeah. I'm just playing Spyro, I'm having a good time. So yeah,
that's a fun memory.
It is, yeah. No, it's something that oddly stuck with me throughout all these years. Is that I just remember that one memory, and you'd think you wouldn't remember something like that after coming off anesthetic, but yeah. So no, that's basically where Spyro began for me, and then for a long time I didn't really have many Spyro games after that. I loved the Spyro games, watching them, like I said, at my cousin's house, but I didn't really have many of them on me as a kid. So for years after, I didn't really play Spyro again until I got a PS3 from my uncle. He gave me his PS3. It was the husband of the aunt who worked at the hospital, actually, and he's like, "Oh, you can get all these like PS1 games on there from like the PS3 store," and I'm like, "Really? Okay, cool." So I checked it out. It was like Crash Bandicoot, there was Siphon Filter, there was Spyro, there was all this kind of stuff, Medieval even, and I was like, "Okay, cool." So I bought Spyro 1 through 3, Crash 1 through 3, and just started playing all these games again that I'd watched my cousin play so vividly in my memories, because by this point, I'd watched him growing up playing these games when I was living in the UK, but of course by this point I emigrated to New Zealand, so yeah, it was now getting to sort of relive those kind of memories years later, just on my own as a teenager, being like, "Oh, I remember this world, I remember my cousin playing this world," particularly in Spyro 1 and 2. Those ones are the ones that most vividly I remember. I remember him playing 3, and even some of like the later stuff. I remember him playing like the Legends games. They weren't really as captivating to me. In fact, I think as a kid I found them quite dark and a little bit intimidating at the time. I kind of want to go back and experience them myself at some point, but yeah.
Nice. What would you say your favorite and least favorite games are?
Oh, that's a tricky one. So my favorite tends to vary basically on my mood. So some days it's Spyro 3. I love Spyro 3. I love all the characters. I know, some people don't really like the additional characters, Sheila, Bentley, all those kind of additional playable characters. I just like them. I think they add to the story. I think they're all, got their own individual charm. They all have, individual unique roles that they play. I quite enjoy the characterization of Sergeant Byrd, the prototypical kind of British kind of naval kind of James Bond kind of inspired. Like as someone grew up, watching the James Bond films, and I was a huge, fan of those movies. To have a character like that in Spyro, I was like, oh, okay, kind of like a James Bondish kind of thing. Yeah, okay, sweet.
Well, isn't he just a parody of him? His name is James Byrd, after all.
James Byrd, yeah, exactly, yeah. But yeah, no, so it depends on my mood. If it's not Spyro 3, I kind of love the simplicity of Spyro 1. It's so relaxing to go back to, especially if I've had like a really stressful week. Sometimes might boot up Spyro 1 and go, do you know what? I'm just going to take my time and I'm just going to go through Spyro 1 and just relax. And it's arguably the Spyro game that I have bonded with my partner with the most over, because she's not really a huge fan of how the later games have a lot of backtracking. She loves Spyro 1 for the sole fact that you can just go into a level, complete everything, and then you're done, and then you move on to the next level. And that's the sort of thing that we would just sort of play. She'd be watching me just playing it and going, oh, that's so relaxing. You can, just sit there and, just play that for hours on end. You wouldn't have to go back to a level. You don't have to, come back after you've beaten a boss or after you've got a certain item. And I'm like, no, you can just sit here and just take your time, do it all in whatever order you want to do it in the home world. So, it's between those two, definitely, depending on my mood. For the worst one, I've got 3 in mind, but I don't know if I would necessarily... I'm not gonna say Enter the Dragonfly, because I think that's like the most obvious answer is that people would give is Enter the Dragonfly, and I think it's kind of been bashed to death at this point. Even I've been guilty of bashing it, but at the same time, it's hard to overlook its issues. That said, I'm not a big fan of Spyro Orange. I absolutely detest that game. It is It is rough. I did not enjoy it in the least. In fact, if I were to play one of the two between, Spyro Orange or Crash Purple, I'd obviously go Crash Purple. But even then, I'd rather not play that either.
My answer would be the opposite. I think I'd rather play Spyro Orange over Crash Purple.
Really?
Crash Purple actually killed me. Spyro Orange was I didn't like it either, but it wasn't nearly as bad as Crash Purple for me.
The other one I would also mention is Shadow Legacy. Oh my god, Shadow Legacy. That one, I wanted to like Shadow Legacy, but it got to a point where I was just like, this is incredibly boring, and I'm sitting there just trying to work out which is worse, a game that is bad, or a game that is so boring to the point of, I just want it to be over and done with. Like, because at the time I played that for the first time in 2020 during the global lockdowns, and I was just going through the entire series again, going, right, I'm going to play every game within, the classic era of Spyro, so, Spyro 1 through Shadow Legacy. And, I'd had a great time with most of the games up until a point, even, to some extent, Enter the Dragonfly. Got to Spyro Orange, was like, well, this is a bit rough. And then I got to Shadow Legacy and was like, no, you know what, this is how this series ended, not with a bang, but with a whimper. And it's kind of sad in a way, because, you would expect the first Spyro game with touch screen controls, with the spells that you can cast in that game, to be actually fairly decent, but it's so sluggish and dull and repetitive and... Yeah.
When I played it for the first time, the game kind of, broke. I got a glitch that, stuck me in an area and I couldn't get out.
Oh.
And I was like, you know what? I don't want to go back to the beginning, so I just stopped playing. I'm like, I don't know what to do anymore. It was just, but yeah, I didn't really enjoy my time with it either. It was just it was so weird.
As I said, I don't think I've ever revisited it in the 5 years since. I've only ever played it once and was like, no, if I ever revisit it, I'll play it on stream. Maybe I'll record myself doing a playthrough of it, but I'm not going to visit it again in my own personal time, no.
Yeah. And that game turns 20 this year, because it came out in 2005, so I guess...
Yes, yeah.
It's a 20th
like 20 years. Gosh, that's so weird to think about. As I say, of all the games, 2005 that came out, in that particular year, like the one that leaps out to me from my childhood at least is Crash Tag Team Racing.
Yes.
But yeah. And then I'm sitting here like, oh yeah, Shadow Legacy, that was also 20 years ago. Ooh. So, yeah.
I love Tag Team. Tag Team is wonderful.
Tag Team's awesome. It gets so much hate, and I really wish it didn't, because it's a fun little game, honestly.
Yeah.
The racing's not brilliant by any stretch of the imagination, but like the platforming, for me as a kid, was something I absolutely adored. Even the characterizations at the time, I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like how certain characters do this and that, and I'm like... No, but as a kid, it was like one of the 4 Crash games I grew up with, and it's all I knew of Crash Bandicoot at the time, so I was like, yeah, Crash is supposed to act like this, I guess, and then I read on the internet years later, no, I don't like how Crash makes weird noises, and, Pasadena makes passes at him, and that sort of thing.
It's so weird, because that's so iconic for him now. I feel like whenever we think of, like, Crash's voice or noises, we think of just Harnell. Like,
exactly.
So, but anyway, back to Spyro. What are your thoughts on the general idea of Spyro 4?
Oh, man, I came out with a video years ago where I was like, this is how I think Spyro 4 should be done, and I don't want to go and rehash that. Primarily, one, because, if people want to go watch it, they can, but two, I kind of look back on that video now and go, there's certain elements that I put in there that I don't know if I necessarily agree with. Like, I remember one of the things that I put in there was, I think, Cinder should be a playable character. And I got a lot of comments from people going, oh, but is it necessary? Do you need to have a secondary character? Do you need Cinder to come back? And I'm like, I remember some people were commenting going, oh, so you're a Cinder fanboy. And I'm like, listen, I only ever watched my cousin play the Legends trilogy. I played Skylanders once when I was a teenager and went, that's not my Spyro, typical edgy teenage kind of thing. And yeah, I looked at it and was like, no, I'm not a Cinder fan in the slightest. I included her because I know there is such a huge amount of love for that character that people really want to see Cinder come back. So that was something that I remember adding at the time, going, it's not really for me, if it was me making these games, I want Cinder to come back for the fans who appreciate that character, who love that character. In terms of the rest of the general idea for Spyro 4, there is one element that I really want to come back that I did cover in the video, and I know it's kind of seems to be a controversial opinion, at least from what I've read online, is that people really want a new villain. They don't want to rehash old villains. They don't want it to be like, oh, Crash Bandicoot's got, Cortex, constantly coming back over and over. They don't want, Ripto coming back, and they don't want Nasty Naut coming back. And I'm like, yeah, but I still find that idea of, in the epilogue of Spyro 3, the idea of Ripto teaming up with Nasty Naut, I still find that very interesting. I don't know why. It's always something that stuck with me and went, that would make a brilliant game. I want to see that happen. We saw it somewhat, I suppose, with the Hero's Tale, with, Nasty teaming up with Red, but, not necessarily to great effect, considering the characterization of Nasty in there was a bit hit and miss. But, yeah, I would like to see a Nasty, Ripto team up for sure. I'm not against a new villain. I think a new villain could be fascinating. I've heard, people come up with concepts of, like, evil dragons or like wyverns or anything like that, and I'm like, those could be brilliant ideas, I suppose. I would like, other elements of the past maybe to show up again. Like, I wouldn't be against, like, elements returning, breaths, power-ups, that kind of thing. But I suppose it really depends on how much they look back on the series and went, well, how much do we really fancy rehashing the same thing over and over? But the one thing I will say is that I really think we should also have a good amount of playable characters, because you've had that with Spyro 3. You had that again in A Hero's Tale with Hunter was playable. Then you had, I think it was like Sergeant Bird, and I think Blink was the other one.
Yeah.
And then, I don't think we should just go back to just having just Spyro. I think there should be a good amount of other playable characters alongside him. Like, I think Hunter would be a really good one to bring back. I'd love to have either maybe Elora or Bianca as a playable character. Just in their own sort of way. I don't know how you'd really do a play style for Elora as such. Like, Hunter's obviously got his bows and arrows. Bianca, you could do, magic spells. I think that's a really fascinating idea, is that you could do, sort of like magic and spells with her, and kind of like get objects out of the way. Like, maybe there's like a portion of the level where there's like covered in vines, and you've got to like get rid of that using like a flame spell or some kind of kinesis spell. I don't know. It's just something that I'm just making up as I go along type of thing.
Well,
so.
a flame spell would seem like rather redundant when you have Spyro there.
Yeah, I suppose so. Actually, now you mentioned it. Yeah.
But, well, I always thought that what we got of playable Elora in Crash Team Rumble was kind of giving us a taste of what it could be like if she was playable in a new Spyro game.
I'll be honest, I presume that there is a bit, of Elora there that you could use for a playstyle, but I'll be honest with you, I haven't played Rumble in gosh knows how long. I think it was season 2. So what kind of thing was she like in when she was revealed? Because I last played really early on in season 2. I don't think she was out by then. I think Ripto was available.
Yeah, she didn't come in until season 3.
Right.
So, so what she had was, it was mostly like kicks and kind of like, flips and jumps and stuff, but she also had healing powers.
Oh, okay.
So that was very interesting.
Sort of like a cleric type thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I could see that maybe, she could, I suppose with the kicks and stuff, use, be used in levels where she could, like, break down barriers and that sort of thing, with, like, a powerful kick. But then that just makes me also think, well, we kind of already had that, I suppose, with Sheila, so I'm not sure how, I suppose if you just want a character, you could just go through a level just in a sort of beat-em-up playthrough kind of style. I suppose you could just use Elora for that, I guess. But, yeah. No, as I say, Elora's a character, I'm quite fond of, and I wouldn't mind seeing her again, and especially because I remember reading years later that she was supposed to have been playable. I think it was in Attack of the Rhinox, was it?
Yeah.
And that was always something that I was like, man, we could have had playable Elora, and not just Sergeant Bird and Agent 9 again for like the 3rd or 4th time. So
yeah, see, I think her healing abilities would be interesting to see. I'm not sure how they would work that in, since it's like not really, unless they do like an RPG-ish sort of thing, but I don't really want that fully for a Spyro game. So it's hard to see how they'd be able to implement that. But personally, I always thought that she should have like a yo-yo attack to reference the Fracture Hills fawns.
Yeah, that's actually a nice callback.
And then now that I'm thinking about it, she could like use it like a grappling hook or something. And then like, there's a lot of things that you could do with like a yo-yo kind of thing. She could use it to like swing across chasms or something.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's funny you actually mentioned now the healing, because something just popped up in my head, and I'm like, this could either go really interestingly, or this would be really weird, and I'm sure a lot of people would be like, no, I don't fancy that. I'm sure you're familiar with Medieval, because I think I've seen you talk about it on the channel before.
Yes, I played that.
In the original, there's that stage right before you fight Zarok. and you've got to keep the skeletons alive.
I remember that.
I was thinking to myself, what if you had a similar sort of thing with Elora? She sort of like leads an army into battle, and like the whole time you're brawling with all these other characters, but at the same time it's like, oh no, you've got to go and help this little soldier. He's not feeling too good. You're gonna go give him some of your healing powers. Just come back across the battlefield and charge and make sure that all your little soldiers are still alive. I'm sure people would absolutely love that. No, it's something that came to mind and was like,
if you don't have to give up your own health to do it, like that was the worst part of it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god, I hated that. I never beat that game because of that whole sequence.
Really?
Because it's a boss rush. And I don't like those. Because it's really hard for me to... I think I got to like the second one and I never beat him, so I never made it. Yeah. So it's hard enough that on the first part you have to give up your health. And so you barely have any to beat the second boss. And you can't even get to the last one. So I never beat it.
I think I've beaten Zarok, I think maybe once, maybe twice in the entire times I've played Medieval. I've got to go play it again. But and as I say, it was just something that came to mind. I was like, what if we had healing, stage like that? No, I'm sure everybody would love that. So maybe best not. Yeah.
That sure is an idea.
I'm not known for just having great ideas. I'm known for having ideas that make people go, well, I'm not sure about that one.
Hot takes.
Indeed, yeah.
So what are the most important things you think a new game should have?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I'll tell you what I think is the most important thing, and maybe it's not as important to other people as it is to me, but I'd really like Stuart Copeland to come back as composer. That's like the big thing for me that I really want. Is I loved his sound in Spyro 1, Spyro 2, Spyro 3, and to a lesser extent, I suppose, in Enter the Dragonfly, where you could actually make out what his sound was. But to me, his soundtracks define Spyro. It's those kind of soundtracks that I go back years later, even when I'm not playing the games, that I'll go back and listen to again and go, man, I really love that level and I just want to listen to that track in isolation type of thing. So yeah, it's, to me, it's really important to bring him back, to have him compose a new game is very important to me. I suppose the other thing that'd be important is just for really it to feel very true to the original trilogy, like in the sense of you play it, you pick it up, you play it, and you go, this feels like a natural kind of continuation of where the trilogy left off. I feel like in some aspects, you didn't really get that with like Enter the Dragonfly. There was sort of no explanation of where the characters have been in between Spyro 3 and Enter the Dragonfly. And like, I'm a sucker for those kind of stories where it's like, oh, what did they get up to in between, X point and Y point type of thing. So that's why I really loved, Crash 4, for example. We got to find out, well, the villains have been stuck there for 20 years, at the end of Crash 3, and then they escape. And it's like, oh, okay, so, that's fine. We kind of get an explanation of, well, what they've been doing all this time. And it's like, I'm not necessarily saying it has to be 20 years for Spyro, but I'm just saying I'd love to see, what's happened in between then. Like, how many more adventures has Spyro had? Has he had, many more off-screen adventures? Or are we literally coming back to him straight away after Spyro 3? Is there any time in between that? Same with, like, characters like Hunter. Is he, basically there's been no time at all, so he's just ready for the next adventure? Or is there some time in between that where he's kind of evolved as a character, maybe become some sort of like adventurer in his own right type of thing, kind of like a clumsy Indiana Jones type thing? I don't know, just something like that where we get sort of natural progression of, well, here's where they were, here's where they are now, which I don't think many of the games that came after the original trilogy really did as such. It was just like, well, here's another adventure that sort of feels sort of disconnected from the rest of it. And I'm just a sucker for those kind of ones that feel, yeah, right, this is like the next story and the progression type of thing.
Right. So what would you think of us getting like a a grown-up Spyro, like visibly aged, like adult version.
When we say adult aged, are we talking like the sort of adult dragons you'd rescue from like the crystal statues and like Spyro 1 type of thing?
Yeah, like the elders.
That's a good question. I've never really thought about that much. I mean, I suppose that you could go for it. I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world, but at the same time, I'm kind of used to Spyro being, the wee little dragon that's just, running around the place. He's not a big dragon, he's not an adult dragon. He's still a young dragon on his adventures. So part of me is like, I understand maybe the appeal of having an older adult Spyro. To me, I still, want to see that sort of young dragon who's still out there learning, making mistakes, adventuring, and just saving whatever worlds he comes across. Maybe I think there's a good sort of halfway point, perhaps, where you can have like a slightly physically older looking Spyro, but he's still, he's not quite an adult. He's sort of like halfway. I hesitate to use like teen because I suppose like that's kind of what Spyro already is, but like almost like a young adult kind of Spyro.
Like what they did in Dawn of the Dragon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that could be a nice change of pace. It's not something we've seen, like you said, except maybe for Dawn of the Dragon. I think that could be brought into the new game, and I think you could have, a sort of halfway point where it feels like it's maybe a slightly more mature Spyro, but not quite to the, degree of the Elder Dragons, per se, yeah.
All right. Let's see. I've run out of standard questions, but I do have some fun things to talk about. So I've been doing a bunch of polls on my channel. I don't know if you've seen these or voted in them. But
I've done a couple, yeah.
Okay, but I'm going to ask, and then you're going to give your answers, because I think this is just another fun thing that I've been able to do on these podcasts. I was like, okay, I'm going to get some live answers from people.
Sure.
All right, so my most recent one. I can't guarantee they'll be good ones, but... My most recent one. Which character interaction or team up would you like to see the most out of characters who have not actually interacted? Elora and Bianca, Cinder and Ember, or Ripto and Nasty Nork?
So you've got me there already with the Ripto and Nasty Nork, but at the same time, I'd love to see Bianca and Elora team up. Like, I think that is a really interesting pairing that we haven't really seen, I don't think anything of that I can remember off the top of my head in any of the games of the classic era. So I think, having those two work together would be a fascinating little team up. What was the other one you said? It was Cinder and
Ember.
Cinder and Ember. I'm not really big on Ember, to be honest. Ember's Ember. I know Ember has her fans, but not necessarily me. But if that's something that came to pass, I'm not going to be sitting there going, "Oh my god, this is absolutely bloody awful." But it'd be fine. But to me, it's either Bianca and Elora or Nasty and Ripto. I'm gonna have to go Nasty and Ripto purely because, like I said earlier on in the episode, it's just something that's fascinated me ever since that epilogue of Spyro 3. So
yeah, okay, that's fair. Another one that people were saying was Elora and Cinder, which I think would be very interesting.
Yeah, I could kind of see that, I suppose. Yeah.
Personally, I think I'd have to go with Elora and Bianca. I mean, for all us, original trilogy fans, it just seems like a thing that they should have done already.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, as I say, it's when I pick Nasty and Ripto because it's like the one that I've been the most fascinated with, but like Elora and Bianca is a very, very close second. Like it's one I would definitely want to see happen in Spyro 4. I want them to have at least some kind of interaction. Just a simple conversation even like would be fine, but I would actually like them to at least maybe do some kind of team up or something at least. So yeah.
Okay. Here is a would you rather thing. For the next Spyro game, would you rather 1. Cinder return but Elora is absent and never mentioned. 2. Bianca is playable but she breaks up with Hunter. 3. Ripto returns as the main villain, but he dies permanently. And 4, Elora has a prominent role, but she gets the alt Tana treatment.
Oh, ooh, those are some spicy choices. See, I can see benefits in killing off Ripto because it's interesting because I'm like, yeah, I'm out here going, we should bring him back with Nasty, and I'm like, well, you know, there's nothing to say you couldn't kill him at the end. I'm just saying I'd like to see him back one more time to do the team up. But what was that one? It was Bianca's playable, but she splits up with Hunter.
Yes.
See, because we hark back to Bianca being playable before, in terms of like the spell casting abilities and that type of thing. And that's something I really want to see as well. But I'm like, would it be worth it at the sacrifice of the relationship? And I'm like, well, to be fair, it's not really much of a relationship in general anyway, is it? Because it doesn't really get referenced a tremendous amount after Year of the Dragon from memory. So yeah. I could probably go with that one, actually. You know, having Bianca be playable, but at the cost of, you know, killing off that relationship. Sure, you know, it's not really a huge loss to me. I'm not really big on the shipping kind of side of things. So, yeah.
You are a stronger person than I for not caring about shipping things. Well, okay, I'm not. I mean, I don't really get into it either because some people are just like, you know, obviously with their shipping wars and stuff. I don't get involved, but
they're very passionate. We'll put it that way. Yeah, it's why I don't get involved partially, but also
it's something I do like think about from time to time. And you know, like I was, you know, not to that extent, but one of those girls in the 2010s, you know. So it's.
I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say that there would be some sort of fleeting thought of, oh, you know, this character might be interesting paired up with this character. It's like, yeah, no, what are you talking about? This is the ramblings of a madman. What are you thinking? And then I just kind of just brush it off and carry on with my day. So, yeah. Yeah.
The ramblings of a madman. Well, I mean, that's just what we all do.
True, yeah.
But, about the other two that we didn't really go into detail on. So, Cinder returning at the cost of Elora, how would you feel about that, just in general?
See, I like Elora, and I wouldn't want her to not appear. So if that meant that Cinder didn't appear, you know, that might be controversial to say, you know, I'm okay with that. But you know what? You know, I'm okay with it, you know. Like I said earlier on, I know Cinder has her fans. And, you know, when I made the video, like I said earlier on, talking about what I wanted to see in Spyro 4, you know, Elora was in there, and so was Cinder. And Cinder had, you know, quite a prominent role. But I suppose, yeah, for me, looking back on it, it's one of those things I look back on and go, you know, I sort of included her, not for me, but, you know, more for the general wider fan base. So for me, like, if it was me having that choice, I'd be like, you know what, if it means I can have Elora, I'd sacrifice Cinder. I would, you know. I'm more of an original series guy than I am for the Legends trilogy. Like I said, I haven't really had much exposure to it. Beyond watching my cousin play it, you know, when I was a kid. And even then, I was just like, you know, these games kind of intimidating. They were a bit dark and a bit scary, you know, when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I've not really revisited them since. I keep meaning to, but I just never got around to it.
So if you could have only one, you would sacrifice the other?
Yes. Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I would keep Elora at the cost of Cinder, if necessary.
You keep Elora at the cost of Cinder, but not the other way around?
Oh, was that not the question? Wait, sorry.
No, the question was, like, if you could have Cinder at the cost of Elora.
Oh, sorry. Cinder at the... Sorry. Okay, let me rephrase that. So, no, I would not take Cinder... No, I'd not take Cinder at the cost of Elora. I think Elora is a lot more fascinating in a new game in terms of where you can go with her. As you mentioned, you know, Rumble, by the sounds of things, opened up some interesting ideas for movesets in terms of like what she could actually do in terms of levels, in terms of what capabilities she could have. Whereas, you know, Cinder, you know, I think you've kind of seen a lot of what Cinder has capable of already. I mean, she had her own elemental powers from what I remember watching growing up, which were quite vastly different from Spyro's. So, if she was to come back, fine. But, I'd rather see something new with Elora in that sense. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. So what if Elora came back, but she got the Crash 4 Tawna treatment?
No. No. I've got nothing against Alt Tawna. In fact, I think you'll see me as probably one of her biggest defenders. I think she's a fine character, and I think she was needed, personally. Tawna, let's be honest, was kind of devoid of character before Alt Tawna came in. And I know there'll be some people out there going, but she, had this characterization in Crash Boom Bang and whatever else. And I'm just like, no. She was basically a blank slate. And I think Alt Tawna is a refreshing change of pace in that regard, with like the grappling, with the kicking and the moves. It's like we talked about with Elora before. It'd be similar. You mentioned like the grappling with the yo-yo, and I'm just suddenly thinking, yeah, that'd be a similar sort of play style actually to Alt Tawna. But yeah, to me, I don't know if that's a path you want to retread by doing another Alt Tawna situation. I think no, it's not something you want to repeat. Primarily because I don't think people would want to be looking at that and going, oh, we're just doing Alt Tawna again. That's kind of lazy. We're not really into that. But at the same time, I think if you're going to include because Tawna, and this might be controversial again to say, but Tawna, I know she has her fans, but I don't really think she had much of a personality or much characterization. The difference with Elora is she has personality, she has characterizations. She has arguably, I would say there's probably more fans of Elora out there than there are Tawna. And that's why, to me, I could understand the justification for Alt Tawna existing. But like an Alt Elora, no, the original's right there. Why not use her?
Yeah. Okay, that's fair answer. And then my last question is, if only one dragon besides Cinder could return to the series, who would you want it to be?
Oh, now that's a... Oh, have I got multiple choice for this one, or is this just of any dragon?
Well, on my poll I had either Ember or Flame, Red or Malefor, or any of the Guardians, but I'll let you choose any of those.
So, Red, I suppose Red would be fine. Ember, again, fine. They're the kind of characters I look at and go, they're nice in terms of, in A Hero's Tale, kind of populating that world and making it seem a bit more lived in by having more younger dragons, more Spyro's age. But I'm not really leaping to see them again. And the other one, sorry, was Malefor and... Red. Ooh.
Or the Sorcerer. You know what? Put him in there too. I don't care.
Yeah. Let's put the Sorcerer in there. Why not? I mean, I remember years ago when I was making that Spyro video that I was like, well, what if you brought back the Sorcerer? But the Sorcerer is Malefor. Kind of, terrible twist reveal that I'm known for. It was me all along. Yeah, that type of thing. Yeah.
Kiwi's terrible twists.
Kiwi's terrible twists. I'm going to market that now, yeah. But no, it was, it'd be something that I think would be interesting would be to bring back Malefor. I think he's kind of a villain. I remember watching, like I said, my cousin play those games. I remember Malefor quite vividly, and I remember that voice and going, oh, that's a bit scary, that's a bit dark. And then years later finding out that was Mark Hamill, of all people. And then I'm sitting there going, you put a damn voice filter over the Joker, over Mark Hamill.
Even hear that it's him.
Like, why? What was the point? What did you bring him in for? You might as well have just pulled a guy off the street and gone, right, speak into this microphone, we've set up a bunch of filters, you're good, here's a paycheck. But instead you went, Mark Hamill! Yeah. You didn't need to be there. And it's like, no, it's a wasted opportunity. And part of me is just sitting there going, could you bring back Malefor literally just to do Mark Hamill? But at the same time, I'm sitting there going, maybe Mark Hamill's probably a bit too big of a name now. I don't know, because I suppose you could get him back.
I mean, you could have gotten me. I could do Malefor's voice. If you put a filter over it, no one would know.
Yeah, exactly. We could all be Malefor. We're all Malefor. That's the name of this episode, Malefor. Surely. We're all just Malefor. It was Malefor all along. There you go. But yeah, no, I just say I think it could be interesting to bring him back, but have him not be put in a voice filter, this big Mark Hamill, but even if you just brought back Malefor without Mark Hamill, I think could be interesting, because it's such a cool idea to have a purple dragon who's actually evil. I remember that at the time, going, wow, this guy's. He's purple. He's like Spyro, but he's evil. Ooh,
yeah.
Ooh. Bit spicy. And then red. Oh. Now, red's an interesting one, because I remember playing A Hero's Tale for the first time, because I watched my cousin play all these games, like I said, but I played it for the first time during the lockdown, and I remember going, I vaguely remember this guy. And I'm like, didn't he have some weird, form or something, like a big monster or something at the end of the game? And then I got to the end and it was like, he's a robot.
It's a mech.
Mecha, yeah. It's like, it's... I in a way, I'm sitting there going, I kind of think they kind of wasted the potential of Red in a sense, but then... in a way, you also have him turn face, turn good guy in Shadow Legacy, and it's like, it's kind of out of nowhere. It feels like there's a bit of a story there that should be told a bit more. Maybe, I say bit more, I mean, you're not really going to be able to, unless you're going to go back and retroactively be like, yeah, well, actually, Hero's Tale is actually like Spyro 6 or whatever, try and loosely connect them all or something. Or if you're just going to tie them all up into sort of different kind of continuities, maybe bring back Red in like a Spyro 4 could be fascinating. Because, have him not as a main villain or whatever, but maybe him as just like a side character, sort of like... Because I think he was kind of like... he was supposed to be taken as this serious villain, but he was more kind of just like a goofy villain to me than anything. He's just sort of like, he's like that sort of scheming, underling type villain who sort of sits there in the corner like, yes, Spyro, you'll fall into my trap.
I love that type of villain.
Yeah, it is. It's so good. But I'm sitting there going, you kind of wish at the same time you want like a big bad, proper big bad on top of that. So like I would love to see Red back in that sort of role of scheming, sort of, secondary type villain. I think, maybe alongside Malefor, like Malefor's the main bad guy. It's like you got Red over there who's sort of like yes master type thing. Sort of like an underling, a servant perhaps even.
Yeah. Oh, what if it was Malefor who was the big bad, but it was like the Sorcerer who was the underling? I don't know why, but he could totally have that energy to him, especially when he's not in his full dragon form and he's in that like smaller kind of like half dragonish form.
Actually, yeah, now you mention it, because again, it's sort of like there's not really much characterization to the Sorcerer, is there? Because it's just, aside from that big monstrous form, he's kind of just there. Yeah. He's again like a blank slate. So yeah, you could have him be like that sort of like magician underling going, Malefor's like, I need you to kill Spyro. Yes, master, I know the way.
Oh, I love
it. So yeah, and it'd be really cool actually. That's a team up that I didn't even consider years ago. I was like, no. Years ago for me, Sorcerer, he's Malefor. Wow, what was I thinking? I could have had this really iconic pairing. Instead I was just like, no, twist villain. Brilliant, yeah. So no, I would love to see Red or Malefor. I think either one of those would be brilliant to bring back. Ember and Flame, okay, maybe not. Sorcerer, yeah, because he's, again, like a blank slate. You can do anything with him. I mean, most people will be like, well, why don't you just make a whole brand new character at that point? And I'm like, I suppose you could do that, rather than just reusing characters. But yeah, I mean, Malefor, probably the biggest one. I think it's the biggest wasted potential, in terms of having the voice, just the filters, even if it wasn't Mark Hamill, like that sort of distortion filter, just not being able to. I remember as a kid going, wait, what's he saying? I'd love to actually hear him speak clearly. Like you couldn't have just got like a intimidating voice actor that you didn't have to slap a filter on. So
yeah
so yeah, either he'd be brilliant. Red, would be interesting to bring back for sure. Or the Sorcerer, yeah, definitely. I think you could definitely change him up and make some interesting changes to the Sorcerer that, he could be like a fascinating little side character. I'm suddenly just thinking, have him as like an underling. I was just realizing it's sort of like, oh gosh, I've just forgotten his name. What's, you play Ratchet and Clank, Nefarious, and I've forgotten his name. The little underling, the servant. What's his name? Lawrence. Yes, Lawrence. Have the Sorcerer as sort of like a Lawrence type character, but not quite as impervious. Like Lawrence's whole thing, you got like Nefarious kind of takes all the brunt of the damage. And, Lawrence is standing off the sidelines like, yeah, very good, sir, very good.
Yeah.
And that's why you kind of want that energy, I think, with the Sorcerer, if you were to do that sort of pairing, be like, yeah, very good, sir, very good. But he's the one who takes all the damage, and then you just got Malefor sitting in the background just like, that blasted Spyro, shaking his fist,
The Sorcerer's just the one who gets beat up and stuff, and oh my
exactly,
God.
Yeah. He's the punching bag, there you go.
Why do I love this characterization of him? It's so like we've just made this thing up and I love it already.
We just created new lore, and that'll be somebody's headcanon now after listening to this for years to come, is the Sorcerer should have been the punching bag.
The punching bag, like scrunkly little gremlin type.
Exactly.
Like, why do I need that? I need this right now.
Toys for Bob, you listener? We want this. We need this.
Oh my God. Okay, and on that note, I think I will end it there.
Fair enough.
Thank you so much for being a part of this episode.
Not a problem. Thank you very much for having me. I know it was an incredible pain to schedule me with my time zones and all, but no, thank you for having me on board. It's been a blast, and I've thoroughly enjoyed, as I hoped I would when I was invited to come on here, so thank you very much.
No problem. And thank you, all of you out there, for listening. As always, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe for more casual gaming content, and I will see you in the next SpyroCast. Until then, this is Miharu, signing off.